Hi, I'm Osas, founder of Deep.Meta. Deep.Meta is an AI platform to predict production defects in metals, which enables them to have less material loss and subsequently use less energy and reduce their carbon emissions. In a steel plant, if you're in there for the first time, it can be a bit overwhelming because everything is incredibly massive. In some parts, it can be also quite loud. And if you're very close to the furnace, as you can imagine, it's very, very hot. And that really does speak to how much energy is being used in these processes. But it's, I guess, like being at the cradle of civilization in the sense that we live in a world where almost everything uses and needs steel. And so when you're in a steel plant, you're right at the heart of where things begin in our society. So the metals industry is incredibly energy intensive. Steel, for example, melts close to around 1,600 degrees Celsius. For every ton of steel made, there is around 2 tons of carbon that is emitted as a result of that. So there's a lot of effort towards decarbonizing the industry. In fact, many of the largest steel companies in the world have actually pledged to be carbon neutral by 2050. As a result of that, making steel right first time is really important. If you have to rework the steel, and that might sometimes involve remelting it, that can increase your energy costs and energy consumption by quite substantial amounts. And what we've learned is that in this industry, there's a lot more waste of material than there ought to be. And we think that's directly linked to not being able to leverage their existing data to inform their decision making. If they were able to, then they could have less material waste and subsequently have less energy consumption. So we get data from our customers and partners, and we are able to make predictions on what the quality of steel is going to be like, and subsequently give them a recommendation as to what they can change in their production line to avoid any kind of quality issue. Otherwise, there might be a higher degree of rework, and in the worst case scenarios, you would have to have the steel remelted, and that's what we're really trying to avoid. Because in that scenario, you're basically making the same product twice, and so emitting a lot more CO2 than you otherwise would have needed to do. Deep.Meta has performed proof of concepts across around half of the steel production stages, which allows us to show that our algorithms can, to some competitive accuracies, predict what the quality of steel is going to be like for a given process. And off the back of that, we've managed to raise our first round of funding, and we've recently been backed by Google. From that, we've engaged other steel partners and are now in an Innovate UK project, which is a £1.9 million project with 2 steel partners as well as an end user. They have an incentive to reduce the carbon per square meter in their buildings, but around 50% of the embodied carbon in their buildings actually comes from steel. So being able to reduce the carbon impact at the previous stages of production, lower down in the supply chain, will subsequently allow them to achieve their goals and allow us to have more sustainable buildings. As a young company, and in our space, we're working with incredibly large players who have revenues in the billions of pounds. There can be barriers and challenges to try to acquire them when you're early on. And so I think one of the main benefits the Greenhouse Accelerator had for us was allowing us to be part of an ecosystem of other startups which are focused on sustainability. So it meant that there was a lot of knowledge that we could draw from in terms of our contemporaries in this space. And they really focus on giving you as much exposure as possible. So this can mean providing you intros to investors. One thing that they did really well were these investor evenings where they would give you access to VCs and angels that were very interested in climate, and you could meet them in a very casual environment and just have a conversation. And actually through those, we were able to meet one of our really key investors today, who's now joined us and has played a critical role in our journey so far, as well as towards closing our first round of funding. This Innovate project is just one part of our journey. Once we've deployed with them, we intend to deploy across the UK and also begin to gather partners internationally. And what this means is that the benefits of Deep.Meta are going to be felt further afield and by places which need them most, particularly in areas of the world that may have incredibly high energy costs. And this is going to have an incredible impact across businesses in terms of their bottom line and also their climate targets. Rolling this out internationally will allow us to have meaningful impact in this industry.